So I've known Andy for many years, and it's really great to have him here tonight. He's an incredible impact investor, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, husband. I've heard, I don't know, because I don't live with him actually, though I'm available. Father of triplets, endurance athlete. He's a hard charger. We're talking Ironman triathletes, not this little sprint stuff. I mean, I'm not taking that away. Those are cool too, but he's an immigrant. I don't know why that's part of this, but self-made. He's autistic. No. Altruistic. So these are the words often used to describe Andy Funk. By the way, speaking of funk, we'll be hearing some funk Saturday night. Sorry, softball. So at age 18, he founded his first technology company while still attending high school. Just a year later, he left behind his family, friends, and country. This does not sound good. Gave up his inheritance, skipped college, and moved to Southern California with a one-way ticket in his pocket. Good times, my man. Since then, he has accumulated a long list of impressive accomplishments. Within 5 years of coming to America, he had founded and sold 3 companies. Wanting to evolve his passion for entrepreneurship, he took his strengths in innovation and startup to the next level by founding his own early-stage venture capital firm at the age of 24, becoming the youngest founding member of a venture capital firm in the United States at that time. Since founding his venture capital firm, Andy has invested in or helped to start and close 20 companies in the medical, health, wellness, and clean technology sectors. Even as a VC, Andy occasionally returns to his roots as a startup entrepreneur. 2007 was one of those years. The birth of Pink Lotus Breast Center came serendipitously from his marriage to Dr. Christy Funk, who at the time was a breast surgeon and director at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The combination of Andy's entrepreneurial innovation with Dr. Funk's superior medical abilities led them to the realization that they could conjointly create a breast center organization that would provide a level of care that patients could not experience anywhere else. Tonight, super achiever Andy Funk shares his lessons learned from launching Pink Lotus Breast Center, and after his talk, he'll take some Q&A from the audience. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Andy Funk, founder, managing director, Funk Ventures, co-founder, executive chairman, Pink Lotus Breast Center, founding director, Pink Lotus Petals. Thanks.
I appreciate everyone for coming out. It's really great to see a lot of familiar faces here. And it's always great to be part of the startup community here in Los Angeles, Santa Monica. A lot of great people, and I'm truly thankful for the opportunity to speak today. I think the introduction, was very thorough. I think I got a little bit of an ego boost, so thanks for that, Steve. But I have to tell you, I'm typically a pretty calm and pretty shy guy, so I've actually been quite terrified of this talk because there's just a lot of things going on. We've built this company over the last 5 years, and it was a pretty rough ride. And this is the first time really that I'm talking to anyone about it publicly, and so that makes me feel kind of uneasy. And I haven't really spoken in public in 5 years, and I know I'm keeping all of you guys away from the Clippers game. So I know that is entirely unacceptable. But anyway. I wanted to thank Steve for inviting me and all of you guys to his beautiful house. This is a spectacular place, and I've never been here, but now I know why you live here. And I also wanted to thank SBC and obviously every single board member and all the volunteers for making this all happen, especially Molly. Thank you so much. And I also wanted to thank you guys for rescheduling this event. Originally, I was supposed to speak about half a year ago, and then a few days before the talk, I got into a really bad bike accident that put me out for many months, and took a long time to recover from it, and I was just in no shape to give this speech, or let alone just stand here, because just lying in bed was exhausting enough. So thanks for rescheduling this and giving me the opportunity to talk one more time, or again, and making it happen. So the agenda today is really to talk about the Pink Lotus Breast Center and what we've done entrepreneurially and why it's been so hard. And so I was a little confused why so many people signed up, because why would you want to hear about how hard entrepreneurship is? But it is hard, right? Everyone agrees here. There's a lot of people in a room owning their own businesses, and you guys know it is not always easy, and sometimes you have to break through the wall. So a little bit about me, even though you've already learned a lot from Steve, but I came here at the age of 19, and I had to forfeit my inheritance of almost about $250 million because I just had no interest in insurance. And I didn't like insurance for one reason. My family's business had been around for 140 years, and it was already perfect. It had accomplished sustainability. And I like to create and innovate, and I'm a builder. I like to build sustainability, create it, but just already having it and having this perfect company that I was just supposed to run, that just didn't resonate with me. So I came over, I built these 3 companies, I started my venture firm, and I really, really enjoy building businesses that have an ability to give back to people, that make the world a better place, and that have an ability to just affect society as a whole. So through my venture firm, like Steve said, I've done this about 20 times with various different businesses in various different sectors. But the Pink Lotus Breast Center also very much falls into this criteria of building something that's going to affect people and that's going to change lives. So this is kind of what I'm all about. Some people think it's cheesy, but this is who I am. And I think a lot of you guys kind of feel the same way here today. So usually in the past, because I'm a venture capitalist at the core, when I talk, usually people want to hear about how to raise money for your company and how to market your product and how to structure your business and how to go about intellectual property and all these different things. But today we're just going to be talking about entrepreneurialism, the hard times, and kind of me and the business as an entrepreneur, not as an investor, not as some kind of corporate guy. And anyway, so that's what we're doing for the next 40 minutes or so. I haven't really had a chance to go through this talk in detail. I've been pretty busy, so it may take an hour. So anyway, so in 2005, about 5 years into running my VC firm, I met Christy. And Christy is a phenomenal, phenomenal physician and just an amazing person. And at the time, she was running the Cedars-Sinai Breast Center, and I was on the board of governors at Cedars-Sinai, which is a large organization for fundraising purposes. And I was also sitting on the finance committee at Cedars. So we had this common interest in Cedars, and but we didn't really know that. And after we met, we started talking about breast cancer and what is it like to have breast cancer? What is it like to be in the position of a physician, and what's it like to run this breast cancer center, and exactly how does this all work? I'm a curious entrepreneur. I want to learn, and so I just started asking her a million different questions. And over time, what we found is that breast cancer and the way it's treated in Los Angeles is highly fragmented. It's very, very, it's not comprehensive, it's not integrative, and it's very complex, very confusing. And that was back in 2006, 2007, and I couldn't, bless you, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why, with all the technology and all the advancements, why we were at a place where it was so fragmented and why the standard of care was so lousy. So as we continued to talk about breast cancer, eventually we got engaged and we planned our wedding. And but to go back to what breast cancer care is actually like in Los Angeles, I like to tell this story of a woman with a lump. She wakes up in the morning, she takes a shower, she feels her breast, and there's something there that doesn't quite feel right. So she freaks out and she calls her OB-GYN. What's going on? Come in for an exam. You go in for an exam, maybe 3-4 days later. So you get your exam. Yeah, this doesn't feel so good. You need to get a mammogram. So okay, you go to an imaging center across town. Maybe you get an appointment in the next 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. So you go get your mammo. Radiologist takes a look at it, but he can't really figure out what's going on because you have dense breast. So your breasts are so dense, on a mammogram, all it shows is white. Unfortunately, cancer also shows as white on mammograms. So it's like a snowstorm, and you can't figure out what you're looking at. So now you need to get an MRI because the radiologist can't make a determination. So you schedule your MRI, but you can't do an MRI unless you just had your period. So maybe that's another 3 weeks out. So now we time into your menstrual cycle, so you have your MRI. Doesn't look so good. It looks like you may have cancer. Go see a surgeon. Get a biopsy. So now you get your biopsy. You send the result to pathology. You wait till you're back from pathology. And this just goes on and on and on. And whew, I'm almost out of breath. and before you know it, yes, you find out you have cancer. Yes, you talk to your surgeon about what the treatment plan is going to be like. And then you're competing with a lot of other specialties, colon, gallbladder, basically for OR space. You need to get into some kind of operating room to take care of your problem. But there's a lot of other people that have problems. So this can take another 2 or 3 weeks. So this entire thing of going from feeling your lump to actually getting it taken care of can take months. And 2 to 4 weeks, best case. And to me, that was unacceptable because the idea of going back and forth between town, it's too complex, it's too confusing. And during this entire time, that woman that I just described is writing her will. She thinks she's gonna die. She doesn't actually know if she has cancer. And that MRI could have said, you don't have cancer. So you could have been guessing and worrying for 2 months and just to find out that you had nothing. So it just didn't make any sense. So out of all of this, the idea for Pink Lotus was born. There was going to be a way that we can do this better. And so the concept of Pink Lotus is really simple. We do everything under one roof. We do everything in a seamless way. From screening to diagnosis to treatment, we can take care of it, and we can take care of it quickly. Be that a day, 2 days, or a week, we can do it faster than pretty much anyone else. And the only reason why we can do that is because we have truly comprehensive care, and because we're not fragmented, and because as a patient, once you come in and we know what's wrong with you, we can take care of you the entire way at your pace. That doesn't mean that you need to be under the knife within a week if you don't want to be. You can drag this out by half a year if that's your choice, but you have the option to. So the idea is quite simple. We reduce anxiety. We are in the anti-anxiety business. We do not want you to worry for 3 months. We want you to actually not worry at all. If you come through our door, we want to make sure that you know that there's hope and that you're likely going to be cured and you're going to be free of your problem. So to do this, we needed to build a center. And it sounds quite easy, right? One location, a little bit of technology, a few doctors, a little bit of money. Let's just do it all. It can't be that complicated. But there's a reason why other people haven't done this before. And it's not because it's easy. So the idea of Pink Lotus kind of became into full swing in 2008, and we were talking about the business and what we wanted to do and how we wanted to build it. And ultimately, I started building a lot of technology and the business plan and the financial model, and all this took a lot of time. And Christy was just going crazy. She was so excited about building this business together. And what could possibly go wrong with building the center? Well, everything could go wrong. So we started recruiting surgeons, and we needed 4 to be truly sustainable and to have the kind of business that where we were going to be profitable and actually make some money so that we can grow and do more of this in the future. And so we negotiated a lease in Beverly Hills in a beautiful facility, 8,000 square foot, probably as much as you would ever want to pay per square foot. I'm not going to tell you how much. You're going to all throw up. And the idea was we're going to sign a lease in late 2008 and open in 2009. So we signed a lease with a lot of personal guarantees attached to it. And the lease was worth millions of dollars, and it was over an 8-year term, so it was not a small commitment. And so we were all ready, for the races, and we were excited. And 2 weeks after we signed the lease, Lehman Brothers went out of business, and the financial markets collapsed. And then after that happened, we thought, well, I have these 2 additional loans that are supposed to be paid out to me in the next month, and I'm pretty sure we can make it work, because a lot of money was owed to me, and we were going to be fine. But of course, those loans never got paid. So the parties who owed me that money defaulted on the loan. So that can happen, of course, if you're in finance. But so that was a little bit of a setback. But then the week after that, we found out that Christy and I were going to have triplets. So I think you just can't plan for everything. And a big entrepreneurial lesson is that you can plan as much as you want, but you're not going to have a crystal ball, no matter how much you think you're going to. And whatever plan you put in place, it's going to be challenged, it's going to be attacked, it's going to be scrutinized. And you need to be able to deal with that, and you need to be prepared for that. And the second lesson is, don't just enter into a personal guarantee unless you know what it means, and unless you're prepared to be dealing and to be ready to deal with the circumstances and the possible repercussions of having that attached to your name. A lot of entrepreneurs who built small companies don't really have the ability not to personally guarantee something because you don't have a balance sheet with millions of dollars on it. So you're forced into it. But when you make that signature, just know that it will alter your decisions in the future whenever things get tough. And I think that's a very, very important thing to understand. So the Pink Lotus story really starts in late 2008. So we now know that everything has gone wrong and nothing else could possibly go any wronger, so to speak. But the problem was that all these physicians we had recruited to partner and join us really didn't have any interest anymore. They knew that the markets were collapsing. They knew we were a startup. They knew that our credit cards were getting canceled, that our loans were getting canceled, that we had to invest all of our money just to make ends meet, just to pay the rent, and we weren't even open yet. And they knew that we were going to have 3 babies. And how do you do that? So we were faced with this idea of moving into a bigger house, starting a company, going through a recession, and building this business, doing this all at the same time. And as far as I heard, it's the probably top 4 stressful things you can do in your life next to a divorce. So it was just not going to be easy. So what do you do when things get really rough? You sit down, you figure things out. You make a commitment, and either that means that you're going to go for it, you're going to break through a wall, or you retract and you give up. Now, I'm usually not the kind of guy who gives up easily, but in this case, it was about more than just wanting something. Christy and I wanted to do this not just because of what we wanted, but also because what we wanted to give to the community and what we wanted to see changed in the breast cancer market in Los Angeles and hopefully at some point beyond this city. So we made a commitment, and our commitment was to make this happen, and it didn't matter to us how hard it was going to get. So we took all of our love, energy, passion, time, everything we had to give, and we poured it all into this company, and it was a really, really rough ride. Anyhow, so the surgeons we recruited, I think I talked about that earlier, we had 1 left. So the business model was built for 4 surgeons. So when you build a business model and you need 4 surgeons to survive and you only have 2 left, you're in trouble. But we figured that we can probably make it work with only 2 surgeons, and so we decided to open the facility in March. March also happened to be the month where the Dow Jones hit the lowest point during the recession, so that was really great timing. And so things went pretty well. Patients were showing up. Patients love Christy, so it was not that difficult to get the initial amount of patients to show up and come to our facility. But we had a really hard time keeping up with expenses, and we had a really hard time just making ends meet. There was just not enough money. 4 surgeons were needed. We had 2. So you do the math. It's not that hard. So we had very little furniture, and pretty soon money was so tight that we basically would run out of toilet paper. And Scott Duffy, who has a great book called Launch that just came on the bookshelves a few months ago, he wrote about this. He dedicated a chapter to kind of the Pink Lotus story, and he was really kind to name it "We're Out of Toilet Paper." So I thought that was a brilliant thing to do. But worse yet, really, Christy was going to give birth within 3 months. So we were going to open in March, and within 3 months, our top surgeon was going to be on maternity leave. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with knowing that you're going to go from X amount of revenue to basically not generating any income for that amount of time? So it was tough, but again, we had so much passion and so much vision for what we wanted to build that we decided to move forward with this and give it a try. So the boys arrived in late June, and that was the greatest day of my life. It was incredible to see 3 little human beings. Anyway, it was insane. There's nothing like it. And so while we were still in the hospital, being all happy about having these amazing boys now, our staff at the center was holding a secret meeting without our knowledge, because we had decided out of the goodness of our hearts that we would continue to pay them, even though we had no one coming into the center at that time. So they held a secret meeting, and in that meeting it was basically discussed that Pink Lotus was a failure, and that everyone needed to jump ship, that the ship was sinking, and that you need to look for a new job. And if you didn't do that now, you were going to be in trouble. So what was okay with me is having a bunch of banks go out of business, having a credit card canceled, having a line of credit canceled, having a loan not come through, that's all fine with me. But when you just got home from the hospital, you have 3 boys that you love and that you want to take care of, and you see the resignation notices coming in to your inbox from your staff who you paid while you were gone, that was an emotional blow. That was really, really tough. Probably more so for Christy than for me. And obviously none of these people had any vision or any idea as to what we were ultimately going to create, but that was their problem. They still made our lives really, really hard. So the entrepreneurial lesson is, if your staff believes that the ship is sinking, then they do believe it is sinking. It does not mean that they're right, because they don't have any idea as to what's going on behind the scenes. Things get so convoluted, things are so complex. Sometimes just feeling that things are not going to go the right way makes them believe that things are not going to work out, and they will jump ship. And that's unfortunate, but that's entrepreneurship, and that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, because that's never been that way for me before. People will generally come into my conference room and say, Andy, I love you, I love what you're doing. Don't pay me for a year. I don't need any money. Give me 2% of your next company. Let's work together. Let's make it happen. That was prior to Pink Lotus, and now, of course, that's no longer the case. But it is what it is. So when Chrissy returned back to work, we had to hire a bunch of new people, because basically she returned to a staff half the size than when we left for the hospital. And we had to really focus on building revenue for the business and getting to a point where we were going to be sustainable and where we could actually survive. And that was not going to be easy, because again, we only had 2 surgeons at that time. So the problem is, the other surgeon was also part of that meeting. So she decided, I'm going to jump ship too. So now we're back from the hospital, and Christy is the sole revenue generator for an 8,000 square foot integrative breast cancer center. And that sucked. That was bad, bad, bad. But it was what it was, and both she and I are fighters, and we decided we're going to pull through, and we're going to make this work, because our vision was so strong. There was something that always told me, if you stop now, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. So we pushed on. Anyhow, so we made it through 2009 with 1 surgeon, with no imaging department. We didn't even have a mammography machine at that point. We couldn't afford it. And we decided to make 2010 a much better year for us. And while that was true, it also came with its amount of setbacks. So we hired an East Coast surgeon, and we were so happy. Finally, we were going to have our 2nd surgeon. The East Coast surgeon arrived. She was moving to Los Angeles because her mom was not doing so well. She wanted to be close to her before she died, maybe for the next 5 to 10 years. She comes here, we train her, we invest all this time into her as a person, credentialing her with hospitals. This takes a huge amount of effort and time. And sure enough, within a few weeks, her mom dies. So she moved here, and we could have held her to her contract, but we're not those kind of people. She wanted to move back to the East Coast. We let her move. And so our 2nd surgeon, yet again, was gone. So we replaced her with another surgeon who came from this area, and we were lucky to find her. She could start right away. We were extremely excited. Within 3 weeks of her starting, or maybe 4 weeks it was, we hear that her doctor had just diagnosed her with a health condition that could no longer afford her to work full time. There's the next surgeon, gone. Yeah, I know. Just keeps going on and on. So anyhow, we were back to it just being Christy again in 2010. So that was definitely a bunch of additional major setbacks. But we did get lucky, and we did figure out a way financially to open our imaging center. Our dear friend Cheryl Crow was really, really nice and lent her name to our imaging center. So now it's called the Cheryl Crow Imaging Center at the Pink Lotus Breast Center. And that gave us a lot of great media attention. And it really helped us out kind of to substantiate who we were and what we stood for. And at that point, Christy's media attention really also increased quite a bit. She was on camera at least every other month or so. And the world was slowly but surely paying attention to what we were doing, even though technically speaking, we were still super small. And we were just a small shop with maybe 20 people at that point. So anyhow, with imaging in place, we can now see thousands of patients, and that was really important because before we could only see patients with problems who had already either a diagnosis or who had some kind of mass and that needed to be investigated. But now we can take care of the patient population that does not have a problem, a woman who just needs a mammogram, an annual screener. But the great thing is, if you come to us and we do find something right there and then, we can route you through the system so quickly that at least by the next day, you know if it's something to worry about or if you can go home without a problem. And that's huge, because that's very difficult to get anywhere in the United States, in breast cancer health, at least. So towards the later part of 2010, I started talking to GE about a new technology that they had developed called CESM, which is contrast mammography. And it was really going to become a huge part for Pink Lotus. And I like to talk about CESM not because I want to sell you guys or something, but because it makes it's a really good showcase for why we're doing what we're doing, and why a lot of other providers do not do this, and how money always gets in the way when it comes to healthcare, and how that's very, very sad. So what is contrast mammography? It's really simple. If you get a typical mammogram, you squish your breast, it's kind of an x-ray, you look inside, and that's it. With contrast mammography, you have a dye injected into your bloodstream, and by doing that, you can take the blood flow patterns, you can reduce them in the image, and the technology will basically remove all the stuff that you don't want to see, and it will just show you where the cancer is. Opposed to an MRI, where you see 1,000 different things in your breast, and you have to kind of figure out which one of them could be cancerous. So there's a lot of false positives with MRI. CESM, contrast mammography, doesn't have that. So it's a great technology. Now, we were barely 2.5 years into the business, and I'm talking to GE at that point about launching this technology at Pink Lotus, being the first center in the country to do this. That was huge, and it showed how much of a brand and marketing power we had already accumulated at that point, even though we were still so small. So we launched CESM. It became a huge media hit, and it just really showcased what we were doing at the Pink Lotus Breast Center. And people were saying, why do you do CESM? Why don't you get an MRI? It's going to make you so much more money. And this is where it gets interesting. So what we try to do, and what I talked about earlier, is reducing anxiety as much as we can. So if you're a woman and you get an ultrasound or a mammogram, and both of them are inconclusive, let's say you have dense breasts, you need to get this MRI that I talked about before. But it can take you 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to get this MRI. And again, you have this one period where even at Pink Lotus, we couldn't do anything to reduce that from, let's say, a month down to a few days. It was impossible. But CESM was going to be able to do that for us. And so I was very, very interested in figuring out a way to incorporate that into the breast center, because with CESM, if you do have that inconclusive mammo or inconclusive ultrasound at the same time, we can get you a CESM the same day or the next day and actually see if you have cancer or not. No more MRI necessary. And even if you wanted to still get the MRI because it's standard of care, at least you knew ahead of time that the likelihood of you having cancer is 0.something%, which is great. So again, it's about reduction of anxiety. Now, MRIs can pay thousands of dollars to hospitals. So if you go to a typical hospital or a typical center, cancer center, what you find is the medical groups are very fragmented and they're all separately owned. So your imaging department is owned by a different medical group than your breast center. So why is that a problem? Because the surgeon you just saw that said you need to get an MRI said so because the board of directors probably said, you are not going to do CESM, you're going to do MRI because overall for the hospital it's more lucrative. So there is a conflict going on, and almost like an infighting in hospitals and with other cancer centers, and it's really, really frustrating because why would you get an MRI and make the patient wait for 4 weeks when you can do it right now? So we only get paid a few $100 for CESM when we could get paid $3,000 a pop for MRI. We decided against MRI. We're going with contrast mammography, and we have done so over the last few years, and we have never regretted that decision. But what we are doing is we're cutting into our own flesh by doing it, because as a venture capitalist, or as whatever you want to, put my hat on for the day, you do have to make money. But we decided not to make that money because the problem for the patient that was solved was so significant that the mere value and the ability to make our patients happy completely trumped all the rest of it. So much about MRI and so much about contrast mammography. I think the entrepreneurial lesson is just because you're small doesn't mean that you can't play with the big boys. Just because we were a couple of years into it, we had financial trouble, we had 2 surgeons, nothing was going according to plan, imaging center was open 2 years after we wanted it to be open. It still doesn't mean you cannot cultivate partnerships. It does not mean that you're not going to get someone like GE interested in what you're doing, but you have to believe and you have to work hard for it, and you have to develop brand and marketing power so that a big corporation like GE would have any interest in using you as a vehicle to introduce a new technology. So that's an entrepreneurial lesson. So what happened next, basically? This, I have to give you a list here because it's so many things. So CESM became a big hit. Stanford ended up contacting us about a collaboration with contrast mammography. We hired a second full-time surgeon in 2011. We hired another surgeon shortly thereafter. We got our Facebook followers up to 130 or 131,000. So everyone was watching what we were doing, which is fantastic. So we have a really great social media outlet, which in breast cancer is huge because people actually care. And people do feel emotionally connected to this cause, and it's different. But again, it's a lot of followers, and we constantly find that social media makes a difference in breast cancer health. I don't know why, but it does. So Christy's on TV about 20 times a year probably, so that also helps us quite a bit. There's a lot of articles being written about us pretty much all over the world, and that's really helped us as well. So we've really established this brand, and it's really helped us. PLBC basically became a dominant force, even though we had all these other problems, and we were still paying the price for them at that time. So the competing cancer centers were losing volume. We could clearly see that we were taking business away from them. And so at least we felt that, considering that we have no investors and no equity investors, and that we basically built this entire thing up from scratch, that we were doing a fairly decent job if, with no additional help, we could get it to this point. So things were great. And then Angelina Jolie happened. So I say that like it's bad, but no, of course, Angelina, that was a pretty big thing. So we performed 3 top secret operations at Pink Lotus with Angelina, and I think the great thing about it is that none of you knew about it, that it was secret, that no one leaked any information. How often do you hear that? Or how often do you hear about medical secrets being leaked? And considering how famous and beautiful and rich Angelina is, this was the person to leak, and nothing happened. So it speaks volumes about our staff, speaks volumes about our organization and the trust, not just that our staff has in us, but also that we have in our staff. Because, hey, quick 50 grand, it's very tempting. But so we kept this very secretive, and we were very careful about how we were going to announce it to the world. But ultimately, we have a ton of celebrity patients, probably 60 or 70, but very few of them really want to go public, because breast cancer is a scary thing, it's a very personal thing, and not everyone wants to talk about it. So besides kind of being part of the biggest trending news story, on May 14th last year, exactly almost 1 year ago, and that was crazy to be part of the biggest news story in the world. But besides that, what it's done is it's changed breast cancer as it stands, or as it stood before, and how women look at it, how women look at genetic mutations, and why they need to look at them in the first place. I mean, most people didn't even know this thing existed. So for us, it was business as usual. BRCA mutation is something we deal with every single day. But Angelina really gave us the opportunity by going public to really explain to the world what this was about, and she made it human so that women could understand it. So we're eternally grateful for what she did and for what she did to for other people. And after 4 years of struggles and pain, it was really ironic how having a person who could afford to go anywhere, fly anywhere, possibly pack an airplane full of physicians and surgeons and God knows, and go wherever she wanted to go, be it Sloan Kettering or Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic, it doesn't matter. But she chose Pink Lotus. And she chose it because of how we work and the kind of work we do, because the people we have on staff, because the physicians we have on staff, and because of how we operate our business. And so that was an incredible experience. So, but there were additional setbacks. Our volume increased. We became even more noticeable to the public than we were before. There was even more media. There was a time really for about 3 months where I got about 100 media inquiries per day. Per day. And I had to choose, and I had to decide, as kind of the top guy in the organization, what do we want to do and what do we not want to do? Yeah, we would love to have Christy on the cover of LA Magazine, that's great, but I don't really want to do this and that, because you get crazy requests from all over the world, from different countries, and you have to learn how to deal with that, and it's not easy. It takes time and energy to respond to all this, and you don't just want to dismiss it, because every piece of PR can help your cause. So you got to be very selective and to be open-minded at the very same time. So our volume increased. The problem with volume increasing is we do take insurance, and one of the things that is really important to us is that we can serve every patient who has insurance, not just rich people. In fact, I think the fact that we're located in Beverly Hills kind of backfires all the time, because people think, oh, you're a cash clinic and only rich people can come see you. That is complete baloney. We take Medicare and Medi-Cal. We take the bottom line insurance available to you, or probably not you guys, but many other people. We take that insurance. So you can come as almost living at the poverty line and get your mammogram at Pink Lotus. That's absolutely possible. So our volume increased, but our insurance payments did not. And this is how insurance works, and this is how messed up it is. You basically have a patient come in, you bill the insurance, and then it can take a year to get paid, a year. So to just put that in perspective, you pay your rent, you pay your employees, you pay for everything that you need to, your whole overhead to make this business work, and then maybe a year later, you're gonna get paid for seeing that patient. So the idea is quite simple from a financial point of view. You gotta be a year ahead of the curve. If you're not a year ahead of the curve, you're gonna feel it, it's gonna be painful, you will not have enough money. The way we made it work is we took out tons of loans. We got ourselves $2 million in debt to make it happen. The times when I was in my early 20s being $250,000 in debt, building my first few companies, seemed like a dream to me. I mean, a dream. 250 grand, that's it? That's fantastic. I want to go back to those days. So anyhow, so we got ourselves into a huge amount of debt to make it all work. And finally, we're at a point now where our balance sheet is extremely healthy. At any given day, we have $4 million or so in billable charges that are owed to us. The problem is insurance doesn't pay quickly. So when I wake up every morning and I check the bank account, I usually go like, where's my $4 million? But it's not there. It's not there, and I'm not going to see it until a year later. So the way to make that work, it's difficult. You need to get ahead of that curve, and if you can't, then you need to continue to take out loans until you are at that point. So a big part of what we're doing right now is we're expanding, we're building a place in Santa Monica, and we're refinancing the company, because we're no longer at a point where we need to be paying the silly loans, so to speak, that we had to take out in the really early startup years, because we're just way beyond that point. But now, it's about expanding. It's about making this happen. It's about doing great things for women and going from seeing 10,000 patients a year to 20,000, and then hopefully pretty soon 30,000, because pretty much everyone who lives in this town deserves great care, and we try to bring it to as many people as we can. So I think I have a few kind of lessons learned. I'm not quite sure how many of those I really want to share with you, but but I think one important one is your ability to adapt to changing environments is critically important as an entrepreneur. If you're set in your ways, if you think that you can always just do it your way, you are eventually going to fail. You need to be able to adapt to changing environments, new technologies, different people, how people think, how business evolves. It's ever changing, and you need to figure out what that means to you. Right now, for us at Pink Lotus, it means how do we deal with a new healthcare law? How does that affect us? And if we can't adapt to that, and if we can't mold our business around that to make it work, we're going to be in trouble at some point in the next 2 or 3 years. So adaptation is really, really important. I think another one is don't be afraid. I think that's critical. I usually tend to have way too much fear. And people go like, yeah, really? You came here on your own, you do Ironmans, you built your own business, you have fear? Yeah, I have a ton of fear. I have fear of failure just like anyone else. And I hate it because every time I feel that I'm really afraid of taking the next step, that's when I miss out on most of my opportunities. So don't be afraid. Being brave, and I think Nelson Mandela said that, means that you have to conquer your fears. It doesn't mean that you don't need to have them. So that's pretty important. Sometimes you have to break your own rules. And this is kind of silly, but if you had come into my conference room, and I'm wearing my VC hat now, I would have told you a few things. Don't ever work with a husband and wife team. Don't ever get into the service business. No services. Products, fine, no services. Don't do anything that you can protect by some kind of IP, eventually. And don't work with doctors because they're the worst. And don't get yourself into a business unless it's properly funded. So this is crazy, right? So I broke every single rule, every single one of my own rules. And I think the important lesson is sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to break through your own wall and sometimes your own head because sometimes you stand in your own way. And rules are great, but rules are meant to be broken at the right time. During a downturn, like the recession, everyone's going to be out for their own. So that was really the toughest time for us. And I can only say that the people I trusted and the people who I thought had my back then did not. When they when they sense failure, when they fear that things are not going to work out, they're going to be gone. And I was really disappointed in some of the people who let me down during that time. And I have to say, it still hurts today. It's really, really crazy. So you just have to choose your partners wisely. And you have to know who the people are that you can trust and who's going to stand by your side when things get really, really rough. And if you can find people like that, you need to embrace them and you need to make them very happy as you can. So a couple more things. Don't dwell in the past. I know I just did. But don't do that. It's not productive. I try to, at least unless I'm standing here, I try to look forward. I try to look towards the future. I try to really look towards what I can do tomorrow to change circumstances, opposed to looking in the past and let that dictate how I feel. I think that's an important one. And just don't let go of your mission and your vision for your organization. I meet a lot of people who have a great vision and that they become successful, they start making money, the millions are coming in, and the first thing you see is they change everything about the great little thing they build. Why? Because other influences, outside influences, because money changes people. And those of you who have the ability to really build a company and become, and stay true to the nature of what you've built, I think that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I applaud every one of you who does that. Even if it means you make less money, even if it means, like Pink Lotus, we're doing contrast mammography instead of MRI, but sometimes that is the way to go. And sometimes it's what makes you popular and famous at the end of the day. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm not sure how much time I blew through, but usually...
Time for a lot of questions.
Okay.
But, if you want to take, can you tell us about Lotus Petals, your charity?
I will. It's a brand new endeavor, so it's something that unfortunately we have not gotten off the ground the way we had wanted to. And the problem with that, unfortunately, is that we are so busy with the breast center that our foundation hasn't received the necessary support. So, but the idea is quite simple. We do want to take insurance, of course, for the breast center, and I talked about that earlier, how we take Medi-Cal and all that. So that's very important to us. But there's still women out there right now who don't have Medi-Cal, and who, if they got Medi-Cal or even they qualified for it, they would have to wait 6 months for an appointment at the county hospital, and then if they need surgery, it could take a year or two. They probably will be dead by then. So Pink Lotus Petals was founded really with the idea that those women who have no insurance and no money, who live below the poverty line, that we can take them on, that we can do their mammograms, but not just do their mammograms, but also route them through surgery and actually help them out. Because there's a lot of free mammography places out there. They're all great, but what are you going to do once you find the cancer? What are you going to do? There's no place that's going to provide free surgery. So Pink Lotus Petals is about really helping women in need today instead of focusing on a cure for cancer in maybe 100 years or in 200 years. There are women today that need help. That's the mission. And hopefully we can dedicate more time to it soon. You pick.
No, go ahead. I mean,
We'll take pick two.
As a VC, you say you started some companies. What kind of companies were they?
They were mostly medical technologies, health and wellness, and clean technology. They were always startups. They're always very early. I enjoy kind of getting my hands dirty. I don't like it when things are too sophisticated. That's why I escaped my family's business. And usually seed rounds, Series A rounds, Series B rounds, really, really risky stuff.
Can you go public?
With Pink Lotus, I never would.
Having been personally and professionally in the cancer world half of my adult life, what you talk about with the fragmentation,
Yeah.
it's very common in every kind of cancer. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, the kind of person that you are and what you've built, do you see this as a model that can be scalable and created? Are you forward thinking for other types of cancer beyond just breast cancer?
I am, and it's just that with this particular organization, we focus only on breast, so I don't want to dilute the brand by bringing other things on board. But I think for a highly specialized environment like spine surgery or neurosurgery, things like that, you can build models like this and brands that can be freestanding, not affiliated with a university or with a hospital, and that can work. But it has to be a subspecialty of sorts. Yeah.
How do you put one of your centers in every single major city, especially the inner cities where the problem, it's just so severe?
Yes.
People don't ever end up getting diagnosed and then pass away. Everybody in the inner city has some of those stories.
Well, that's a great question. And yes, that's the plan. That's why I'm standing here. That's why I'm not going to go public, because I have no interest in having public shareholders telling me what to do. I have no interest in them forcing me to grow at 20% a year, or otherwise I'm out. None of that will work for me. And it's also why we have stayed away from equity investors so far, because I have no interest in selling this company in 5 years. We're not doing this to sell. We do need to make money, we do need to pay our mortgage and all that, but ultimately we're doing this to build a business for 20, 30, maybe 40 years, and the idea is to be in every city. The problem that we have is that because we're self-funded and because we still have debt on the books, there's only so much you can do to grow. And so having the right kind of partnerships and doing everything at the right time is critically important, and that's unfortunately it's a difficult task. So our location in Santa Monica, hopefully within a couple of months it's going to be open. And then after Santa Monica, we have the Valley, we have Pasadena. There's a lot of other places in LA where we're trying to open up. And then once we sort of have the LA market, then we're probably going to think about Phoenix and Houston and many other cities. But it's going to be a long-term project, and I'm going to have gray hair before it's going to be over.
One suggestion, they're changing the crowdfunding rules.
Yes.
The federal government is. You could easily, just based on your success so far, get
Sure.
and then all of your centers are funded.
Yeah.
I wanted to put that out.
That's, I've thought about that many times, and so far it's not something that I've pulled the trigger on, but you know, we are technically speaking a for-profit, so it's just, it becomes difficult to have 10,000 shareholders. So, but yeah, I agree.
Let's give
Thank
Andy
you.
a